What's going on, y'all? It's your boy James, and you're watching Watch Your Mouth Reviews, where I am going to give a review while trying to watch my mouth. Ain't gonna happen in this movie. So, as you guys know, I am doing my favorite horror movies for the month of October, least favorite to ultimate favorite. Today is day number 4, and we're going to be reviewing When a Stranger Calls. Yes, When a Stranger Calls is based on the urban legend of the babysitter having the kids upstairs, and the man calls her from the actual children's room. It is probably one of the oldest urban legends out there. It is hilarious. I love this movie just because it is another game of cat and mouse, just like Vacancy, just like P2. I absolutely love these kind of horror movies, so let's go ahead and begin. So starting out, we get like a dialogue of an attack happening, but we don't really meet the babysitter or the children or who's doing this. It's kind of just phone calls back and forth. And there's always a question of, did you check the children? And it's like, ooh, okay. Nice little horror movie. I get it. Nice little soliloquy. It reminds me a lot of Scream. Like, I think Scream was supposed to mirror kind of that sense of, okay, I'm calling you from inside the house kind of situation. But this one actually went with the actual urban legend. Shout out to Urban Legends. I cannot wait to review that movie. It's going to be definitely somewhere later in the month because it is one of my top 10. So we get a scene where obviously the killer kills the babysitter after asking her if he checks the children. The police come. They don't know. They don't have any leads. They don't know who did this. They don't know what happened. All they know is that the babysitter's dead. So then the movie panel announced the star of the show. Her name is Jill. Jill is this track star. We see her running track, running a circle, and she's used to doing this under 24 seconds. It's like, I don't know, a quarter mile maybe. And the coach was all like, come on, Jill, because Jill gets distracted because she sees her boyfriend, which let's go ahead and get in that story. So Jill's boyfriend is Bobby. So Bobby had cheated on Jill with her best friend Tiffany, and she goes to her locker and she picks up her cell phone. This was back when Nextel was huge. Everybody wanted the little chirper phones, and when you had a Nextel, you had minutes on your phone and unlimited nights and weekends. I think all cell phone plans had that until Metro PCS came out and introduced the unlimited talk plan. But she ran down her minutes, and her dad grounded her for running down the minutes because I guess throughout the whole time that they've been broken up, he's called her and tried to beg her and ran over her minutes. So her dad grounded her. So now she has to take a job babysitting to pay that cell phone bill. So she goes to her art class and meets her friend who's played by Tessa Thompson. Hey, Tess. Tessa plays Scarlett. And Scarlett basically, is saying, hey, we're going to the rave tonight. What time you picking us up? And Jill goes, I'm grounded and I got to take a babysitting job. And, Scarlett looks disappointed because I guess they go to this rave all the time. And then in comes in Tiffany. Tiffany's like, hey, guys, as if nothing's wrong. Jill kind of gives her the silent treatment like, really? Why are you coming over here? And Scarlett goes, come on, guys, this is so high school. And Jill goes, we're in high school. So the conversation kind of gets a little, abrupt. And so Tiffany just walks off. And, that was it. That was the end of her school day, So we saw the drama that she had in that. So her dad drives her to the Mandrakis, who she's babysitting for. And what was so interesting is that she could have said, Dad, I could have drove myself. And he goes, you're grounded, remember? So she's like, you think I would just bail and not show up to this place? And he goes, no, I trust you more than that. But, we just want to make sure you get here. And they drive out, and then Mandrakis live far as hell outside of this town. Even the dad was like, ooh, they kind of live way out here. But when they get to the house, we see it's this very modern home. And it was on like a creek. The home was beautiful. Like, I love the decor and everything of this house. When Jill walks up, we see this man who is Dr. Mandrakis just completely just stick his head out the door and just stares at her. And she goes, hi, I'm Jill, the babysitter. And it kind of creeped her out. He goes, oh yeah, we've been expecting you. Come on in. And this is where things get really, really interesting. And he goes, honey, have you seen my keys? And she goes, go look in the kitchen. And then we see this young lady walk down the stairs. And I said, she goes, hi, I'm Kelly Mandrakis. I said, sure you are, Mrs. Mandrakis. And child, Mrs. Mandrakis looked 20 years younger. And you couldn't tell me she wasn't a local waitress at the Waffle House. Mrs. Mandrakis, what you do to get that man? Call the sheriff, Mrs. Mandrakis. What you make him eggplant parmesan? Come on, Miss Mandrakis, you better let me know what you did. Cause ain't no way I'm looking at this thinking y'all have been together all this time. Like, there's no way. And so Mrs. Mandrakis come out with her sequins black dress and shoes and high heels. She didn't got adapted to this rich lifestyle. I could tell she didn't grow up with this. So she's, showing Jill around this big, beautiful home and, giving her all the deeds and, telling her these are the numbers in case there's an emergency. You see a list of all the neighbors, the restaurant, the son, the maid. It was a whole bunch of, situation with all this. She shows her everything of this house, but the children. And when they are facing her, they're like, okay, did we forget anything? And she goes, yeah, the children. Where are the children? She goes, oh, yes, the children. So they're upstairs. They're fighting the flu. I didn't give them their medication. They're asleep. And she drugged the hell out of them kids. And sometimes them kids is terrors. I'm telling you, sometimes kids are. Rich kids don't have much, to see it struggle. So, they probably get everything they want. Not mad, just observation. So Dr. Mandrakis and Mrs. Mandrakis end up walking out the front door. And she goes, oh, we have an alarm. Are you familiar with how this works? And she goes, absolutely. She goes, good. I'm going to write the code down for you. And as they're walking out, Mr. Mandrakis walks out the door, but then he walks back in to set the alarm. And he goes, make yourself at home. And I just said, no problem. So Jill goes in and she is walking around this big old house. At some point, she goes into the Mandrakis' bedroom. She got all up in the woman's jewelry, up in the woman's dresses, and, kind of just exploring and just thinking, wow, she's just amazed at this house. So after a while, she gets a phone call. And the phone call, when she gets it, the person's like, is everything okay? And she was like, Dr. Mandrakis? And then the phone hangs up. And so she's weird. She's weirded out and she doesn't know what's going on. And she starts hearing noises in the house and she begins to investigate and try to see what's going on. So she ends up walking around and she goes into the dining room, where the dining room is also facing a big pond in the middle. The pond pretty much circles the entire house, so you couldn't go into a room without seeing this pond in the middle of the house. So she goes and she sees the housekeeper, who is Rosa. Rosa's like, hello. And she, waves back at Rosa and then walks back and, thinks nothing is wrong. So she gets another phone call, and this time the voice is different. And he goes, what are you wearing? And she goes, combat boots. And I don't know what kind of top she said she had on. And he starts snickering. And she goes, whoever this isn't funny. He goes, yeah, it is. Ha, 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 ha. And then hangs up the phone. And see, I'd have been annoyed at this point. I'd have been like, why are y'all calling me? What are you doing? So as time goes on, she calls Scarlett, and Scarlett's like, I'm getting ready to go to this rave, and I heard that Bobby is going to be there. And she goes, oh, okay. She goes, if you see him, give him the number. And Scarlett was like, why would you want to talk to him? And I talked to Tiffany, and she goes, I don't want to have this conversation. Look, if he asks about me, just give him the number. I would like to talk to him. So she does. And then at this moment, we're looking around. Jill is still kind of going through this placement of, this babysitting is boring. So she begins, to walk around. She hears another noise coming from the kitchen. We end up finding it was the ice maker. So she, grabs a popsicle, and then the phone rings again. So when she puts the popsicle down, she answers the phone and she goes, hello, and there's no one there. And then it goes, hello. And then we see that it's Tiffany. And Tiffany you know, in the beginning of this movie, Tiffany wasn't as giggly and bubbly. So in this movie, in this scene, she's all like, hey, what's going on? And she goes, what are you doing here? And she goes, this house is amazing. Totally not listening, totally going around looking through shit. And she goes, I bet they have a killer bar. And they were like, and she was like, I don't want you here. And it was kind of weird because she didn't know exactly what to say to Tiffany. You could tell she wasn't ready to face her just yet. And she goes, I might be expecting somebody. She goes, who, Bobby? She goes, what's it to you? She goes, I don't know, I'm your best friend. And Jill was like, it's hard to tell. And she goes, look, Bobby had a crush on me first, and that was supposed to be my man. And then here you come, and then he looks at you, and then all around, it's not into me anymore. And I'm all like, Tiffany, let me explain something to you. If the man ain't made his move and made you his girlfriend, then he ain't yours. So if he sees somebody else that he's more attracted to, he gonna go towards her because he's single. That's what single people do. I didn't like Tiffany. I didn't care for Tiffany. I thought Tiffany was pathetic, and I thought that was stupid for her to even say that. So Tiffany then goes, you know, I'm about to go to the rave. Come with me. You know, we can just set the alarm. You know, we can come back and no one will ever know. And it's like, yeah, Tiffany. So what happens when Dr. Mandrakis and Mrs. Mandrakis drive their ass home because they just wanted to go ahead and, you know, let Jill off early, and they come there and she's not there? Oh, yeah, that would do right. Well, she already grounded. So Tiffany goes, kidding. And I said, you know, you weren't. You were dead ass serious. Because had Jill say, yeah, girl, come on, let's go, and took that long, you'd be like, hee hee hee, and then go on and go. So go somewhere. Oh, Tiffany will work you on her. So Tiffany leaves the house. It's windy. It looked like it's finna storm. How convenient, because it was a sunny day with a cloud up in that sky in the beginning of this movie. How opportune that. If I hadn't known better, I'd have said that was Arizona, because that's how Arizona weather be. So they go into Tiffany's death scene, which we didn't get to see Tiffany die. We don't know how he did it. I was bad. That was a missed opportunity. I wanted to see how he did it. I want to see what he did. I want to see what had happened. We'll see Tiffany later, but Tiffany gets in her little red little Toyota. The car wouldn't start at first, so she's stepping on the gas pedal. All you see was her shaking like this, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, common sense, yeah. When the car ain't starting, step on that gas pedal, make sure you can cut that fuel line. So she finally gets the car started, she backs up, and then she sees there's this tree. So she's already kind of freaked out. She didn't, you know, want to get out the car, but she eventually unlocks the car door and then tries to move this tree. We don't know what happened to Tiffany. All we know is we hear banging at the door, and we're just like, the hell? And even Jill was like, okay, Tiffany, I know this is you, so what are you doing? Tiffany doesn't respond, if that is Tiffany. I don't think that was Tiffany. I think that was that man playing with her. So she opens the door and nobody's there. So she gets confused and she closes the door and she's like, what the hell happened? So after a moment, she ends up calling Bobby. Bobby ends up calling the house and he goes, hello? And she goes, Bobby, what's going on? He goes, what are you talking about? He goes, oh, is Tiffany there? He goes, no, I haven't seen Tiffany. And she goes, someone's been pranking me. He goes, Cody did prank you once, you know. Someone gave him the number and he ended up pranking you. And she goes, well, has he called more than once? Because I've been getting multiple prank calls. She goes, check and see if he called me more than once. And he says, hey, Cody. And then the phone line cuts off. So now Jill doesn't know what to think. She knows now that Tiffany hasn't made it there, and, you know, she's getting these weird phone calls and everything. And then she gets another phone call saying, have you checked the children? And she's like, oh my God, what is going on? What is going on? So she goes upstairs. The children still asleep, so she knows. And then she gets another phone call. How are the children? So she freaks out. So then she calls the police. So when she calls the police, you know, the cop is trying to calm her down. You know, she says that, you know, here's someone's watching me. He can see me. And he goes, okay. So what we can do is we can put in, you know, a tracer on the line. So all you have to do is keep on the line for, you know, more than 1 minute, and we'll make sure we trace them and go from there. So what Jill ends up doing is Jill goes around the house again, and then she looks at the guest house and sees that, you know, the lights are on, and she figures, okay, well, maybe Todd is there. So she looks over and tries to find Todd's number, and she calls the guest house, and she was all like, hey, Todd, if you're up there, or if Rosa is up there, because we don't know if Rosa is dead or alive at this point. We know that the alarm has been tripped off. We know Rosa was in the fish pond and little room, and she wasn't in there no more. So we don't know what's going on at this point. Jill's trying to find any logical explanation for this. So she, you know, keeps staring at the guest house, kind of trying to make her move. The man has not called since. So what she goes and does is something I would have never done. She ends up going to the guest house. So she picks up the keys, she locks the door, and she sets the alarm. And then she runs over to the guest house. And when she gets inside the guest house, and I will say, Todd, you was nasty. That guest house was dirty as hell, unorganized. What is going on here? This ain't how Mrs. Mandrakis with her 34-year-old self to your 60-year-old daddy does not like to have her house was clean. Why is this guest house clean? Todd, just slipping. So she goes inside and she looks around. Todd's not there. The phone rings inside of Todd's guest house versus it ringing, you know, in the main house. So she's like, it's you, isn't it? And then she puts on her thing and trying to make conversation, not realizing that he's not calling the line that the police officers have bugged. So I'm just like, when is she gonna notice this? Like, you would have noticed that he called the wrong line. So when he hangs up the phone, it is the time, but he calls the other line. And she goes, you called the wrong line. And it's like, yeah, he did. And you didn't even notice it. Come on, Jill, we like you now. So Jill basically goes back to the house. She ends up running, goes back in the house, sets the alarm, and then she goes back into the house. Because at this moment, when she was in the guest house, she knows that Rosa's lights come on. So when she goes back into the main house, she begins to go upstairs, and she goes back into, you know, Rosa's, you know, where Rosa's room is on the 3rd floor. But before she gets up to the stairs, she realizes the actual line rings again. So she picks up the line and notices that there's no voice. So then she begins to time it again. So as she's walking through the house on the phone, she walks up to Rosa's quarters and realizes that Rosa showers on when she walks into the room. But she's still on the phone with this man. At this point, he's still letting the time go by because he already knows what he's hitting for. He already knows. He's been watching her this entire time. So she begins to, you know, go inside the bathroom, but before she does, she, you know, hangs up the line and realizes Rosa is not in the shower. And the police officer calls her back. He goes, Jill, the phone calls are coming from inside the house. He's inside the house. Get out of there. And when Jill hangs up the phone, because she's in shock, we finally see Tiffany laying on the other side of the bathroom. She's dead, but we don't know how he did. I'm assuming he strangled her because she looked lifeless. She looked pale. I'm assuming he strangled her. No blood was getting through her face. Cold way to go. I would have loved to have seen it because we don't like Tiffany. So I would have loved to have seen it. So she runs, and she runs into the direction of the children's room. And when she gets into the children's rooms, the children aren't there. And she's like, oh no. So she starts yelling, kids, where are you? And she goes up to like this toy chest and she opens it, and the children are right in the actual toy chest, and they're crying, they're freaked out because they've seen this man. That's what that is. They've seen this man already. Jill just hasn't seen him. So she gets them to the door, and then the man is standing right in the ceiling on one of the beams. And the kids are freaking out. They're screaming. They run back into the room, and she closes the door. Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm touching my nose. It's my allergy season. The weather's, it's going to start storming here, so the weather's crazy. Sorry about that. But she ends up going and tying the lamp to the door so he can't get in there. So the kids end up showing her there's a way out through one of the windows that leads into the pond. And see, I would have tried to avoid to go into this pond room at all costs. Because let's say there's fish in this pond, there are birds flying around on hanging on the trees, and it's a lot of little birds and ducks and all kind of shit up in there. I'm not trying to go in there. But Jill was not me. I am not Jill. We two different people. So what she ends up doing, she ends up going, and they end up, hiding out in there, and they can see the man. He's looking down at them, so they could see that he's going through each corner room. Because in this house, as Mrs. Mandrake said, anytime you go into a room, a light comes on. So they see him kind of circling. Why they didn't run their asses out? Because he's upstairs, y'all downstairs. Why y'all didn't run y'all asses out? I have no idea. I would have ran out of there. But she ends up hiding the kids, and she ends up getting in the water. Which is another stupid thing. Why the hell would you get in that water? Well, what the hell, Jill? Like, I want to like you. I do. But when you do stupid shit like that, it makes no sense. So Jill basically goes into the water. The man ends up going inside of the room. But before he does, it's like a whole bunch of steam and fog. I guess to bring humidity to the room for whatever reason. I don't know. It was weird. So Jill basically goes underneath the water, and then we see Rosa. Rosa is dead underwater. Jill screams, but she holds her scream. She screams underneath the water, which, how do people do that and hold their breath? I had a friend who could do that too, and I'm like, she used to laugh underwater, and I used to think that was the creepiest thing I ever seen in my life. So Jill ends up going out, and the man, when she comes back up, he obviously heard her come up out the water. So what she ends up doing is she ends up holding her mouth and being completely still. And the man ends up trying to grab her from one of the planks. So he ends up trying to grab her. So what Jill does, once he grabs a hold of her, she flips the thing over and then gets her and the kids out. Now the kids go and hide, and he has a grip of her hair because he was able to get out that water and catch her. He has a grip of her hair as she closed the door. So she ends up ripping her hair out, and she ends up trying to find the kids. And so the kids are hiding in the sheet on the window. And I said, no, y'all weren't the right kind of kids. Because, see, I would have never tried to do that. I wouldn't even have wasted my time. I'd have been trying to find a way up out of here. Because, Mama said, always run out the front door. Hold yourselves out. If you have to go out the window, make sure you get your brother out first. And you make sure you hold him. And then you make sure he's as far down as possible. See, my mom kind of prepared me for stuff like this. I always knew what to do, and I had those still instincts today. Jill obviously did not get that same kind of training. Can't blame Jill. So we realized that as she's trying to find the kids, she realized one of the birds that was in the pond is out of the actual placement of the pond. It's like the bird was sitting on some kind of stand, and she goes, oh no. So she begins looking around the fish pond and notices that the killer actually got out of the pond directly from, directly out of the pond, and the birds are all out sitting on the stand. The cat, it's happy day for the little cat. I think his name was Chester. Chester chewing on them birds. It was quite gory to look at. And the killer ends up popping up, scaring Jill out of the place. She ends up getting the kids out of the door, but the man grabs her and throws her back into the house and closes the door. And they're they flipping and flopping. She kicks them, she hits them with stuff. And then they end up being in the living room. And what Jill does is she takes a fire poker and stabs him in the hand, and then runs out of the house. And when she gets out of the house, she's met by one of the police officers, and she's fighting, she's freaked out. Anybody would have in that situation. And the police go in there and they grab him. They finally caught who's been killing all these babysitters. I said, ain't that crazy, Jill? You done got away. Now, they have Jill in front of the house. The Mandrakeses, Mrs. Mandrakes over there hold her children. And I said, girl, look at that new money. Look at that new money. So Jill basically is freaked out. She's pale. She's not looking at anything. They have to drive the man off to jail. And when they drive him off, they pan a picture of his face. And we realize it's Tommy Flanagan. Tommy Flanagan, he's the guy with the scars on his face. He was in All About the Benjamins. He was in Charlie's Angels. He was in Smoking Aces. he always plays some kind of bad guy or an assassin. It's quite funny. So the feeling that the guy who's killing these babysitters is him, I thought that was kind of clever. And he really has used those scars on his face to his advantage in acting because he does look like, you know, the typical bad guy. So Jill is in the hospital after she done had this crazy ass night. And she ends up, you know, kind of reliving this nightmare. We don't know if it's real. We don't know if it's fake. All we know is that, you know, she still feels like somebody is after her. And I'm just like, ugh. And then that's the end of the movie. Now, I never understood, let's kind of have this conversation. I never understood what this urban legend was supposed to, because, you know, urban legends are stories that have some kind of significant meaning to life. So you know how when the urban legend goes, when the guy and the girl are in the car about to have premarital sex, you know, and he has to go pee, you know, somebody's out there with a hook for a hand trying to kill them because they're not supposed to be out there. I don't know what this urban legend was supposed to mean. I guess babysitters do your job. Like, it was just, I've never really understood this one. So, you know, I guess, hey, I guess they're just trying to make the urban legends look like some kind of way that someone's always out to kill you. And if you do it this way, you're going to end up dying. Who knows? But I love this movie. It is a perfect game of cat and mouse. You know, I love that kind of horror movie antic, like in Vacancy, P2. I love how that happens. So I'm going to try to switch it up for the next movie for day number 5. I'm probably going to pull out one of my top 10 and kind of place it in here just to kind of give like input. And I want to insert myself back into a horror movie. I couldn't do this one or the other two like I did with House of Wax just because there's less people and, you know, the focus is really on, you know, them two, like just another just one person or two people. So we'll try our best to have this, you know, a little bit more fun. I'm gonna try to be a little bit more because I listen to myself. I sound monotone as hell. So I'm gonna try to be a little bit more energetic with this. I didn't have my coffee, but I gotta get my ass to work. So I thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe if you like what you're seeing. I'm definitely going to do more content and definitely going to pick up a little bit more. So I'm hoping to see you guys here and riding with me throughout this. This has definitely been an experience. And I'm trying to get the hang of this YouTube life as I'm new to it. So hope everyone enjoys what they watch. And until the next movie review, guys, I'll see you soon.